So I'm Jason with Born Handy, and today I want to show you how to build this kayak mounting system that I've got on the wall behind me here. I built these for myself several years ago, and now I'm doing them for someone else. The basic idea for these was born because when I first bought my own kayaks, I went to the store looking for some commercially available kayak mounting options, and the only systems that I could find were pretty expensive, around $80 per kayak. There may be some cheaper systems out there today, but even still, I think this system is going to be pretty tough to beat. I was able to mount 3 of these kayaks today with literally less than $50. And I made a pretty amateur mistake earlier today when I started doing this one, in that I didn't have the camera turned on during the entire narration and build of this rack. So I'm going to do it for the second rack and hope that the battery on my camera lasts long enough for me to get this done. The good news is it goes pretty fast, and so hopefully it won't be an issue. First thing you're going to need is a piece of 1/2-inch electrical conduit metal. The second thing that you're going to need are a couple of 1/2-inch conduit clips, the kind that have a screw on the top and the bottom. The ones with a screw on just one side will not do the job. The next thing you're going to need is 2 pieces of wood. These happen to be 8x8 sheets of plywood, but you could do other sizes. Whatever material you have laying around is probably okay, just so long as it's big enough and sturdy enough. You don't want one of these racks sitting directly against the wall, simply because the leg of the rack that keeps the rack from tipping downward will push through the sheetrock, given enough time and pressure. And lastly, you're going to need a conduit bender. This was honestly the single biggest purchase today. These things here are right around 30 bucks. I bought this one several years ago for around $25, so the price hasn't gone up that much, and they're worth their weight in gold when you need to use one of these. The truth is, if you know a good electrician or maybe even a plumber, you might be able to borrow one of these and not have to even spend the money. So, having said all that, let's move right into building the rack for the last kayak. The first thing you want to do is to go ahead and grab the very end of your pipe bender on the very end of your 10-foot piece of 1/2-inch conduit and bend until you reach the 45-degree angle. Now on over to the other side, where we're going to do the same thing. The difference here is you have to be aware of the direction that your other end is pointing. You don't want one of these pointing straight up and one of them pointing to the side. They need to be pretty close to each other. Doesn't have to be exact, just close. The other thing is if it does happen to be off by a little bit, which in this case it is, you can ask your partner to stand on the other side and give it a quick twist and have a second look. And that appears to be exact. I can't really call out any measurements to you because every kayak is going to be different. You ultimately have to just kind of guess through this on your own. But I will say for this next bend, I typically go about a credit card's length away from where the last bend ended from where I start my next bend. I'll also tell you that for this bend, the first bend that you made needs to be flat to the floor, and this bend needs to be vertical. And now you can just leave this on and slide it down. And this is just a scientific guess. This bend is going to be the bend that cradles your kayak. So the distance between here and this bend is just going to depend on the kayak that you have. That looks pretty good. But if for some reason you got it wrong, these are actually pretty easy to straighten back out. And do again. I'm going to call that perfect. Flipping around to the other side, again, about a credit card's width away between where your bender starts and the end of the last bend. Also with your pipe bender being up into the air and the previous bend being parallel to the ground. You can leave the pipe bender on, slide it back, and just take a guess. That looks pretty good. So now I want to add this curve to the rack. Honestly, just bend it by hand and make your best attempt. This is a lot easier to bend than you may think. And just bend it to what you think looks about right. And that looks pretty good in my eyes. It's a good idea to be aware of how far down the kayak comes beyond the rack so that when you mount your second one, you know how high to go. I can tell you that in this case, the kayak comes pretty close to the bottom of these wooden plates. So as long as these wooden plates are about 6 inches above this kayak, we should be in good shape. When you're looking for studs, a good place to start is near an electrical outlet or a light switch. there's almost always a stud on one side or the other, and it should be pretty easy to tell just by listening. And I was able to determine that there was a stud exactly right here. Then I measured 16 inches away until I found the next two studs, which I managed to find one here and one here. So in this case, I'm simply going to mount the next racks directly above that line. Now I need to determine how high I need to be, so I'm going to place the kayak back in here and put a temporary mark at the top of that kayak. Then I'll come up above that mark 5 or 6 inches and put another mark. So I know that my blocks need to be positioned at this line or slightly above it, but still leave enough room to clear this garage door. And now that I have both blocks mounted, I'm going to go ahead and secure the mounting rack to the wall with these conduit clips. If you happen to get these in the wrong spot, it's pretty easy to just shift your block one way or the other to make adjustments. Now, of course, the first thing you're probably wondering is why the squares don't line up. And that's simply because when we make these, it's not an exact science. It's a lot of guesswork. And so this rack ended up being about 6 inches longer than this one, and so our stud alignment changed. You'll notice that our clips are mounted on the absolute extremities of these wooden blocks in this case, and here they're going to be mounted a lot closer in. So when I come up here and I do another test fit, I can see that I'm probably a little further out than I want to be. No problem, I'm just going to scoot this one in this direction just a little bit. That should do the trick. And it does. What I'm checking for is that I have enough of a flat area here for these clips to go on, and that I have enough of a downturn that's going to catch on the plaque and not on the drywall. In this case, this is pretty good, so we're going to go ahead and secure it. You should be able to see that with just a little bit of trial and error, that these racks could be made pretty easily and fairly quickly. In addition, they're a huge money saver. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no reason to not just go out and buy yourself a pipe bender to mount your kayaks to the wall the cheaper way. And I don't know if you can hear that or not, but those are the tornado sirens going off. So until next time, this is Jason with Born Handy.